Hello and welcome back to In the Corner. Today is Sunday, April 13th. I'm Cash. This is episode 39 of In the Corner. We are very, very close to 40 episodes. And we had an awesome weekend of fights this past weekend. Obviously, last night, we had both UFC 314 with Alexander Volkanovski defeating Diego Lopes by unanimous decision to reclaim the featherweight title. Some other huge fights in that card, and as well in Atlantic City, Jaron Ennis becoming a unified welterweight champion, defeating Eimantas Stanionis via TKO in the sixth round. After the sixth round ended, he retired. You had some other fights. You had PFL. You had some smaller boxing cards. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about some news that's been circulating in the past few days. But let's kick it off with the big events of the weekend. That was UFC 314, and man, that main event was awesome. Was it the most insane action-packed fight ever? No, but it had plenty of action, had lots of drama. I thought that Volk fought very, very smart, and it was clear that he was just the more experienced, more skilled fighter. And, Diego Lopes has been on such a meteoric rise, and I was happy he got his title shot, but after watching this fight, it was clear, he's not on Volk's level, but he still fought very well. I thought he had a fantastic performance. I mean, he dropped Volk at the end of the second round. That was maybe the biggest moment of the fight, the biggest, sense of fear, and watching it, a lot of people were rooting for Volk, and I kind of was too, even though I'm a huge fan of Diego. Just seeing it, Volk was just boxing so well. He was just, very, very smart fighting. And the equalizer was Diego's power. Diego was the more powerful one. And every time he landed a shot, I was like, oh, oh, oh. And so it was a really fun fight to watch. The scorecards came out to be all the way across for Volk being 49-46 twice and 48-47. I had a 49-46 as well. I know that some people may give Diego the second round, and I won't argue with you on that. He did knock Volk down pretty big, but other than that, I thought Volk had a very good round, so I gave it to him. But that he did have by far the biggest moment of that round, so I won't complain. I won't argue with you if you do give him that round, but I personally didn't. I thought it was an awesome fight, though. Volk is now champion once again. As for what's next, it should be Movsar Evloev. We'll talk about it just now. Yair Rodriguez looked phenomenal. He dominated Patricio Pitbull. I think that he won that 30-27 all the way around, just out-wrestled him and controlled him on the ground. It sucks for Pitbull in his UFC debut, but, he's still got plenty of fights ahead of him. And Yair Rodriguez all of a sudden entered the title picture. And he called for a rematch with Volk at UFC 320 for Noche UFC. And when Volk was asked about that, he said, I'd like to return sooner than that. I want to be back in July. So we've got active champ Volk back again. He's been one of the best champions just because of how solid his run was and how much he, defended the belt. He fights like 3 times a year, and I love hearing that he's going to try and keep up that same level of activity. I'm totally down for him returning in July. I don't think that he will, just with that cut. And it seems like UFC's other guys in place already, probably for July. But, maybe August, September time, maybe for Noche UFC, we'll get him back in the cage. It should be Movsar Evloev next. I think he's been waiting around for his title shot. I know the UFC doesn't want to give it to him just because he is not the most exciting fighter and they don't want to risk him being champion. But to be honest, after last night, I feel like Volk is going to stay king of the featherweight division until his age really starts to affect him, which, seeing last night, it didn't seem like it really has too much. So I think that I think that he beats Evloev. I think that he beats Yair. He beats Diego, as we saw last night. One fight that I see people calling for, and I love, is Yair Rodriguez versus Diego Lopes. They're going to be right closely ranked, right next to each other. They were meant to fight in March before these fights came up on the pay-per-view card, and they had a huge moment at the press conference where they were going back and forth. I think that's a perfect fight to book next. And, winner of that could get a title shot. Maybe if Diego wins, he doesn't just because he just had one. But who knows? The featherweight division has become very, very interesting again. Laura Murphy just won last week, and not the most exciting fashion, but he's still in that mix. So I'm really excited to see what goes down next. But very impressive fight from Volk and Diego. I thought they put on a hell of a show. Very class guys. And I'm excited to see them both back. But, it felt really cool to see Volk with that belt around his waist again. Okay, co-main event, Michael Chandler, Paddy the Baddy. Wow, Paddy the Baddy, he's gotten a lot of stick. He's gotten a lot of stick over the years for just being a character, McGregor wannabe, whatever. He proved all the doubters wrong last night and showed, I walk the walk. I talk the talk, but I walk the walk. He is seriously talented. He is seriously, oh my gosh, he's just so aggressive. He's so relentless, so violent. I mean, that was utter domination on Michael Chandler. First round or two was a little bit close. Third round, obliterated him, cut him so bad in the face. He had him in hell. I mean, my God, that was crazy. And the fact that he finished Michael Chandler like that, obviously, I'm not calling for a title shot now, but give him a top 5 matchup. He'd said, he was like, yeah, my plan is to do top 8 matchup, which you got with Chandler in April, once fighting Abu Dhabi in October against a top 5 guy, and then get a title shot next year. That plan could work. That plan really could work. He's going to be in a big fight next at lightweight. Man, that was seriously impressive from him. It was a 5-round fight. He didn't need all of them. As for Chandler, I don't know if it's time to retire. He has lost, I think it's now like 5 of his last 6, but they've all been against such high-quality opponents. I don't really know what's next for him. As for Paddy, he's in such a good division, man. Any fight they do next for him in the top 10, I'll be more than happy with, but the UFC has a new star on their hands, and something that they need is a new star, and it really could be Paddy the Baddy, because if he stays active, that's all they need. All they need is him to stay active, and they're good. His big issue right now is that he doesn't fight a lot, and he gets super big outside of camp. He says that Paddy the Fatty is gone. He's going to try and be more active, and yeah, he's a huge character. Everybody loves his personality. That was seriously impressive from him. Now, of course, the people's main event, the fight that everyone had been hyped up for, was Bryce Mitchell-Gian Silva. Man, Silva the fighting nerds are incredible. I think they're 19-0 now after last night, most of those by finish, and he just obliterated Bryce Mitchell. First round, much cleaner work the whole time. Never had him, it wasn't like it was a 10-8 round or anything, but Mitchell didn't really have any big success. Silva was just doing him so good, and, Bryce Mitchell wouldn't shake hands, and Silva's like, all right, you're going to pay for that. And that submission in the second round, that had spite to it. I mean, he had him so tight, and it took him a second. Mitchell tapped, and Silva waited a few extra seconds, and then gets on the cage and barks. Very, very funny character, but super, super impressive fighter. That whole team that was incredible. I also saw some people calling for Gene Silva versus Yair Rodriguez, which I think that may be a bit of a jump, because I think that Gene Silva wasn't even ranked. He's now probably going to inherit Bryce Mitchell's ranking. I don't think he's ready for that, but dude, pretty soon we're going to see these fighting nerds in title fights, because man, they are just monsters, and that was so impressive last night. That was crazy. He just put all that doubt to rest, and this whole story's over. And Bryce Mitchell, I mean, after being submitted, I don't know if I've ever seen someone in such bad shape after being submitted, just laying there like that. And yeah, it was just crazy to see. And of course, kicking off the main card, you had Dominic Reyes with a huge first round knockout over Nikita Krylov. As an upset. Best people was saying, Dominic Reyes' title run starts now. He hasn't had the best last couple of years or so, but that was huge knockout from him. I believe he's going to be top 10 at light heavyweight now, and yeah, could see him in a good fight next. But that was maybe knockout of the night. Okay, Dan Ige, Sean Woodson, not bad stoppage. It wasn't like the most horrendous thing, but I thought Woodson was not in a state of emergency, or super seriousness. I thought that he looked okay, and it's whatever. It wasn't the most exciting fight. It was, in fact, a very boring fight. So I'm not, crying about the stoppage, but it does feel bad because I had the fight tied, and if I were to pick anyone to be 2 rounds up, it would be Sean Woodson. So who knows, but yeah. And then Virna Jandiroba totally dominated Jan Zianen. So she is now, I believe, number 1 ranked at strawweight and should be next for the title. We don't know if Zhang Weili is going to fight Valentina Shevchenko next, or if she's going to stay at 115. So it could be a vacant belt that Jandiroba fights for, or it could be against the champion in Zhang Weili. Either one I'm cool with. I do think that she should probably be next. That was not the most exciting fight again, but she did what she had to do. And another fight that was not the most exciting was Jim Miller, Chase Hooper. I saw Chase Hooper say that he was gooning too much in camp, which is hilarious. But he did what he had to do. I thought that Miller probably won the first round, but I thought that Hooper looked pretty good. Just wrestled him and did what he had to do. But again, wasn't the craziest fight ever. I'm just happy that Miller didn't get too seriously hurt, because now I don't want him to get too hurt, because I want him to fight once, maybe twice a year until UFC 400, so he can be on all the cards. But he's had a lot of fights, and he kind of looks like he's getting up there. What else? Oh, Cedriques Dumas and Michael Oleksiejczuk. So Michael stopped Dumas pretty quick. That was pretty cool. Who Who else was cool? Tracy and Gore and Marco Tulio. Marco Tulio, that was incredible. That may have been that was one of the fights of the night. Tulio was just so good in there. Both of them were. That first round was so back and forth. It was awesome. And then Tulio obviously took over in the second and finished him. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. Very impressive. The whole card really was very, very fun fights. Very entertaining. It was one of the most stacked pay-per-views we've had in a while. Just looking at how deep that card was, it's crazy. I mean, we had a number one contender fight with 6 more fights after it. That's crazy. Like it was such a good card. It really does seem like UFC just kind of is putting on these super pay-per-views and then doing like some good decent pay-per-views and then another super pay-per-view. But yeah, we've got some good ones lined up. Looking at 315, I didn't realize, I'm like, this is actually a pretty solid card. And 316 I'm sure is going to be solid, and 317 is going to be huge. Okay, let's move over to Atlantic City, from Miami to AC. And I thought that the Atlantic City card was great as well. Almost all the fights on that card went by knockout. The main topic, of course, is Jaron Boots Ennis, and wow. Boots has had a lot of smack talked about him. He hasn't looked the best in his last 2 fights. He gets hit a good bit, against Karen Chikadzian. He had a fight that he definitely won, but lost a handful of rounds in. Didn't look his best. And a lot of people were saying, is he really that guy? Is Stanionis going to pull off the upset here? Is Boots going to get exposed? Like Boots is so weight trained. Is he going to be able to make this cut? Boots gets hit too much. All of that got put to rest. He outclassed Eimantas Stanionis. And I know, Stanionis, he hadn't as many fights, and he hadn't been active, and he's never been on the stage before, but man, no. Boots totally outclassed him. He proved, no, this guy is not on my level at all. I think you could maybe give Stanionis 1 round. I think I gave him maybe the 3rd round. Other than that, it was all Boots. Boots was just outboxing him completely. Stanionis had some good shots in there. He was targeting the body, which was really smart with how, weight-trained Boots is. But it just wasn't enough, and Boots looked like he was the stronger puncher. And then when it comes to the 6th round, he just really steps it up. And, Stanionis just can't even lay a finger on him. Boots is just pounding on him. And, Stanionis goes down, and they get to the corner. And just the way that his coach was talking to him was like they're pulling him out, and yet they did. Not a bad call. I didn't think that it was like, oh man, Stanionis is in a world of hurt here, but he was taking a lot of punishment, and he didn't look like he wanted to continue, so good job to them. As for what's next for Boots, he has so many options. He can unify at 147. The Brian Norman fight is the main one that people are talking about. I like that fight. Mario Barrios is there as well. You've got Shakram Giasov, who looked really good in the first fight of the main card. Obviously his young daughter passed away just 2 years ago, which is heartbreaking and so impressive for him to come out and still fight just a few weeks later. So, all the respect in the world to him, and he looked great. He got his first knockout in like 4 years, I want to say. Just tore his guy apart and looked really good. And, he's been mandatory with the WBA for a while. He's now, he's going to get his title shot next. The WBA said he will fight for the title next. So it really could be Boots versus Giasov. If Boots doesn't fight him, I think he may have to lose that belt. And then you've also got the guys coming up to 147. Ryan and Devin are there now. And then you've also got Teofimo Lopez, who's likely to move up after the Barboza fight should he win. Or is it time for Boots to move up? We know 147 is hard for him to make. He's got plenty of fights at 154. Obviously, Virgil Ortiz, huge name there that they've been linked to fight each other for a while. You got plenty of other champions there. Bakram Murtazaliev, Sebastian Fundora, Terrence Crawford is one that people have been calling for years. Boots has so many options. Any of the options I'm fine with, but they really do have a future pound-for-pound guy, a future American superstar on their hands. And, Matchroom has proven they did a good job managing him. People had their doubts saying he may leave just because, they're not getting the best fights, but he got to headline in Philly twice. Excuse me. Headline in Philly twice. He got to, become a unified champion, a Ring Magazine champion, and I think that there's a whole world of opportunities for him, and who knows what's next, but I'm excited to see any of the options because he's got plenty. Now, in the co-main event of that card, you had Ray Ford, Thomas Matisse, and Ray Ford looked so good. He dominated Thomas Matisse. In my opinion, though, I was a little bit disappointed with him. I thought that he boxed so well and looked great, but I feel like he could have pushed more. He hurt Matisse in like the 1st or 2nd round. Hurt him big time. Didn't drop him, but he hurt him. And then he just kind of went through the motions for the rest of the fight. And he did the same thing in his last fight, too, where he hurt the guy early and then didn't really push on him. And I know he's not really that kind of fighter, but I feel like if he had the aggression, he'd be the perfect fighter because he's smart, he's technical, and he has power, but he doesn't use that power effectively, I feel. And he just, fights till he gets a decision. And he won every single round on every single scorecard. It was very, very impressive, but I feel like he can do more. Now, his next fight is likely going to be for a world title, and I think he absolutely should be. He had the Nick Ball fight where he was the champion. Close fight that he lost, very close fight. His comeback, he's looked great in his first two fights at 130. I think that he's proven himself. Yeah, he's ready for a title. They want to do Sugar Nunes versus Ray Savage Ford. Should Nunes beat Rikishi, which I think that he will in May, they're going to try to make that as an in-house fight. Should that not happen, they want to do Oshaki Foster versus Ray Ford, which I think makes a lot of sense too. Those guys, they don't get along super well. They do really good American super featherweights. I have no problem with it, but I would like to see Ray Ford's next fight be for world title. I think he's ready for it, and he's a very, very impressive fighter. Also on the main card, you had Omari Jones, who, he looks very good. Now, I saw some people saying like, I said he looked great, and some people said no, he didn't look great. Look at the opponent. I'm like, well, the opponent has nothing to do with how good he is, and they're finding good opponents for him. That guy was 13-5, which is crazy for a second fight, and Omari Jones dealt with him like he was nothing. He obviously should probably be in there with somebody better, but they got to develop him. They got to get his record up and stuff. He's 2-0 now with 2 knockouts. This one's even quicker than the first one. Very, very quick. Just hit him with a big shot that the guy wants to know more with. A big body shot, and a very impressive prospect. He's an Olympian. And we'll see what they do with him in the next couple of years, but he's looked very good so far in his first 2 fights, and I'd like to see him back out. I know they have a show in June, I think, in America. Put him on that. Get him active, yeah. You had Zaquin Moses, who also looked very good in the card. He got a third-round TKO. Tamir Smalls was very impressive. I thought he had a really good first-round knockout. I found very impressive. Arturo Cardenas as well. He's someone that's very interesting to me because I feel he hasn't looked great in his last couple fights, and he's in like the top 10 of the WBC, I want to say. He clearly is a good fighter, trained by Robert Garcia. But I don't know. He lost a couple of rounds against Edgar Joe Cortez, who was 9-7. For where you are and how many fights you've had and the skill you're supposed to be at, you shouldn't be losing those rounds to that guy. I knew he was supposed to have a tougher fight. That guy pulled out. They put him on the prelims against, a journeyman, but he should have gotten him out a lot quicker. He did stop him in the 8th round, so he still gets the stoppage. And, in that fight, after the first couple of rounds, he figured out his footing. And from that point on, he looked very impressive. But it was just that first bit where I was like, man, I don't know. He's talking about winning a world title shot. And I think he's at lightweight, I want to say. He's not in a division where it's going to be easy. So I'd like to see him get really tested next, and then we can see, what he's really made of. I remember he fought on that Diego Pacheco card in California in August, and I thought that he lost that fight. So, we'll see. Anyways, PFL had their second card on Thursday night in Orlando yet again, where they had the women's flyweight and bantamweight bracket. A lot of upsets on that card. I was actually more entertained by the women's flyweight fights. So what's next in that division is Liz Carmouche, who looked insane. She ran through her opponent in 30 seconds or something. First round TKO, very impressive. She's going to be in with Laura Dunn, who also had a first round finish, hers by submission. I think that Donna is undefeated, so that'll make it interesting. You have your undefeated prospect rising contender versus your established long-time all-time great, really, in women's mixed martial arts and a former Bellator champion. I think that's a good fight. So that should be fun. And then you're going to have Jenna Bishop, who looked really impressive as well, versus Ekaterina Shakalova. So the women's flyweight division looks really fun. They all had great wins, and I'm very excited for their semifinals. As for the men, I thought that their fights were decent as well. It'll be Justin Wetzel versus Mando Gutierrez. I wasn't blown away by any of the guys on this card. Justin Wetzel did defeat Kasum Kasumov, who's probably the tournament favorite, so I thought that was really crazy. And he, handily won that fight, I thought. And then you have the main event was Leandro Higo versus Marcirli Alves, which was a close fight, but it was one that Alves won, and I kind of agree with that. I think that there are some close rounds in there, but he did the better work. And what's crazy about that is that Alves came in on one day's notice, was the underdog. And he's now moving forward in the tournament when, 36 hours before, he wasn't even going to be in the tournament. So that's awesome for him. He's going to face Jake Hadley next. who had a good win on the prelims of that card. Yeah, so PFL looks really good this season, and I'm enjoying it so far. And from there, we just had some other smaller boxing cards on the weekend. You and I the Tiger card on Thursday night, which was pretty decent. Mary Spencer, she was defended her WBA super welterweight world title, won every round against Oglede Suarez. So she's likely to get set up for unification next. We'll see if I the Tiger can secure that for her, but I was impressed by her. Dimitri Asanu went the distance with Francesco Patera. He also won every round. Looked good. And then you had Christopher Guerrero, who won most of the rounds against Oliver Quintana. A good learning fight with him. And yeah, I mean, so you had a long night there on Thursday because you also had John Arobio, who's one of the best prospects in the sport right now, and he went 8 rounds for the first time. His only second time going the distance. The first one was only across 4 rounds. He's a big puncher. He was in with a tough opponent who wouldn't go down. So, your last few fights there all went a long time. So it ended up going a lot longer than I was expecting and hoping it to. But you had some early knockouts as well on the card. Eric Israelian had a good pro debut. Moreno Fandero had another big stoppage. Very, very impressive puncher. Alexander Volkanovski as well had a good stoppage. But yeah, I was impressed by a lot of the guys on that card. I thought Christopher Guerrero looked really good. And Dimitri Asanu, who, says he wants to fight Keyshawn Davis, Andy Cruz, those level of guys. And I think that he will get there one day. He looked really good, but I just don't know if he's there quite yet. They're the top of the top, so we'll see. But I enjoyed that card. Pro Box TV card as well last night. Jordan White largely dominating Jose Matias Romero over 10 rounds. He dropped him in the third. I thought that he looked really good. Stephen Shaw had a very, very big first-round knockout over Rafael Akpegiori. I enjoyed that one a good bit. William Foster the third and Brandon Benitez. He beat he beat him. It was a little bit tough early on, but he figured him out. That was pretty good. And then you had some prospects on that card. Frankie Scarborough Jr. had a big knockout. Jordan Roach went in with Garen Diagen, who's a very interesting fighter to me. Diagen challenged for Oscar Collazo's world title like a year and a half ago, but outside of that, he's a journeyman. And that just shows you how limited the 105 weight class is. He's moved up since then, and he just fights like prospects, and he gets knocked out by them sometimes. He gave Jordan Roach quite a bit of issues. His younger brother of Lamont Roach, of course. But I thought he still won the fight. And then you had David Whitmire look decent. Benjamin Johnson had a big first-round knockout. So, yeah, some good fighters on that card as well. Pro Box always has good shows. A bit of a longer one than I'm used to with them. They had a lot of fights on this card, and most of them went the distance, but I enjoyed it. I thought there were some good fights, and I'm really looking forward to their next one on May 10th with Lubin versus Holmes, which is going to be big. There was the first professional boxing card in Cuba in 63 years, I think I saw. Which I had no idea they didn't have one there in so long, but there's some decent fights on there. Main event was Julio Cesar La Cruz versus Dylan Prasovic, was an eliminator for the WBA Bridgerweight title. So they're going to fight, I think it's Muslim Gadzi Magomedov. I think that he is the champion there. And so that could be a good fight. La Cruz won this one by third-round stoppage after a second round where they both got dropped big time. La Cruz dropped him 3 times in the third round to right the wrongs. Arislandi Alvarez had a very quick first-round KO. He looked very good. There's some really, really good guys out of the amateur system from Cuba. And they've all looked really good, and there's some other good ones on that card as well. And then the only other card this weekend was one in Dublin, Sainan Kelly versus Declan Garagti. I just had this one in the background while I was watching while I was waiting for the big cards to start at night, just because there's nothing in the UK at all this weekend actually, which is a bit surprising. But we had this one card in Ireland, so I was like, okay, I'll throw it on. Nothing too impressive. There's some okay fights, but I will say that the pacing of the card was very good. They flowed from fight to fight super fast. There was no ads during it. So that was pretty cool. Good weekend of fights. Obviously, the big standouts were the incredible UFC card and Boots Ennis, who looked fantastic. Big future for everyone who fought this weekend. Let's talk about some news. Biggest news, at least in my opinion, that I haven't seen talked about a lot. I think it kind of went under the radar, but it just kind of reminds us about what's about to come. Usyk Dubois 2, the decision for what's going to happen next is imminent. Apparently, the WBO has received a petition to allow Alexander Usyk to have a voluntary defense of the titles. A unification bout with one IBF champion Daniel Dubois. This comes after WBO ordered Usyk Parker Parker, of course, the interim champion. He's waited for a long time. I do think that he deserves his title shot. And should Usyk Dubois come to fruition, which I think it is, I think that they're about to announce that pretty soon for Wembley, and I have no objections to that. I think that the Parker may have to be upgraded. And I think that WBO may strip Usyk, which sucks because then it makes the Usyk Dubois fight, which would of course be for undisputed, no longer for undisputed. And we're in the same thing we were with the heavyweight division before. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I have no objections to Usyk Dubois too. This will make Usyk's last 6 fights be Dubois twice, Fury twice, and AJ twice. Which, we're looking at and say, okay, can we get someone else in the picture? So I would have been perfectly fine with Usyk Parker, but I'm perfectly fine with Usyk Dubois too. I'm really excited for that. Noel Mikhailian has stepped in for Ryan Rizicki to face Badou Jack on May 3rd. We talked on the last episode about how Rizicki got injured. His title shot is just cursed. He couldn't, even when he fought for the interim title, it was a draw. So that sucks. But Mikhailian, who was champion in recess, is now going to fight Badou Jack. So really, champion versus champion when they're both champions. We'll see. I think that Badou Jack should win this one. But yeah, we've still got a few weeks to go until that one. Salida Promotions has signed Franchon Cruz Dezern. This is very interesting. I thought that, I don't really know what's been going on with Cruz Dezern. She hasn't fought since December of 2023, I think. And part of me is wondering, we don't really know who Shields is going to fight next. There's not a lot of people going around. I did see how Nikki Spadarian said that if she wants to fight Alicia Baumgartner, which they've certainly talked about wanting to do that, she's going to have to go down to Baumgartner's weight or weight that works for her. They're just too big of a difference. It doesn't make any sense for them to fight. But, Cruz Dezern versus Shields makes a lot of sense. They are friends now, and they fought a long time ago. But I think they both kind of said that they'd be down to do another one. Shields doesn't really have a lot of big names around her, and Cruz Dezern signing with Salida when there's really not a lot of people that Salida are signing kind of does make me wonder, okay, she's a multi-fight deal. Surely she's been promised a Claressa Shields rematch. And I'd be okay with that, but I'd rather see Shields fight someone like Shadeja Green or Savannah Marshall rematch, a fight that either deserves a rematch or we haven't seen yet. I'd even be down for, I don't know, like Chris Cyborg, she said, although I think she's a good bit bigger than her, but, just switch something up. We had the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn trailer. Excuse me. I thought that was pretty fun. It was definitely out there with KSI and Speed in it, which was a little bit cringy. And this one didn't feel like a trailer, just felt like more of like an actual movie, like a short film. But it was a little bit silly, but I did like the video game aspect and them going into different types of games and stuff. I'm really excited for this fight. I don't think we really need the trailers, but I enjoy them all the time. This one wasn't one of my favorites, but I did like that they leaned into the video game aspect with the Fatal Fury sponsor. Also, Eubank crushing the egg was really cool, and then Ben growling at him. You also have UFC Baku is confirmed for Azerbaijan on June 21st, and who will be on that card will be Jamal Hill, Claire Roundtree Jr. We already knew this. It's so weird that they're doing this fight as the main event. Obviously, they're just rebooking because it was meant to happen, but these are 2 Americans, and they have so many fights in America. This really should have just been for the Atlanta card 1 week earlier, and they should have had some other, Eastern European fighters on this card, which I'm sure they will, but it's just such a weird fight to headline that card. But, who cares? Shakur Stevenson will not fight on Turkey's events after his comments about Turkey's broken promises. This is very interesting. To be honest, I don't even remember what the comments were about Turkey, but Shakur just said something about the fights he was supposed to have or how much he was supposed to get paid or something, and he wasn't happy with it. And it didn't even seem like he thought, whatever the comments were, it didn't seem like he thought that they were too disparaging or too, whatever against Turkey, but Turkey took it the other way, and this came from Eddie Hearn. So it seems like, Eddie Hearn's kind of the middleman here. He represents Shakur, but he also has to work with Turkey. He just said no, Shakur will no longer fight on Riyadh Season Ring events after his comments about Turkey, which, I do get. Turkey's like, okay, you're gonna talk bad about me to the public. Okay, you don't have to fight on my cards, fine. But also, it is kind of like, I'm kind of worried with, Turkey also writing the Ring magazine, and it just kind of seems like he's, taking over a little bit too much where you can't talk bad against him, otherwise he'll, blacklist you from fighting on certain events, or even if Shakur fights for the Ring title. I'm worried that Turkey's going to try and prevent that, so who knows, but, I don't know. Jarrell Miller is going to have to face, or he's going to have to excuse me, a portion of Jerome Miller's fight purse is going to have to be withdrawn to the British Boxing Board of Control. Of course, they did not like his behavior. That was the reason. His behavior at the press conference. Yes, he probably shouldn't have. He probably should have just stayed seated, and he didn't have to go over and get in Woodley's face and push his face. He didn't even slap him. But come on, he's selling a fight. Nobody got hurt. Like, I don't think he really had to surrender part of his purse. It was over a diss track. Like, they're just getting a little bit too excited about fighting everyone and stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, the British Boxing Board of Control has always gotten on everyone's nerves about everything. They abuse their power. They do all these fines and stuff, and it's just really annoying. Kyron Davis versus Yoeli Hernandez is reportedly set for the Caleb Plant Jermall Charlo doubleheader on May 31st in Vegas. I'm so down for that fight. That is a very good fight at middleweight. These are two guys potentially in the top 10. After this, Yoeli Hernandez is going to be set up for a world title shot. It could have happened now. I'm not mad that he's taking another fight because he probably should, but Kyron Davis just upset Elijah Garcia in June, and he was supposed to fight against who was it? Etinosa Oliha, and then I think it was a WBO final eliminator, or maybe it was IBF, and then he pulled out of it for no reason seemingly. It seems like this is the reason. I like this fight probably more than the Oliha one. I think it's a better fight for actually. It's not a better fight for Davis. I think Yoeli Hernandez is going to win this one. I think Yoeli Hernandez is a monster, and he is a world champion in waiting. He's 7-0 with 7 knockouts, and he's already in a fight like this. It's a great fight to put on that card, and to be honest, it's probably going to be the fight I'm most looking forward to in terms of competition. I think it's a very good fight, and it's one that I see Hernandez winning, but Davis has the chance to be the underdog, to upset the odds. So Eddie Hearn has made some comments about multiple fighters that we're going to talk about. First of all, he says that Bam will be back in the summer in a unification fight. This is going to have to be Kafu. Pumalele Kafu, that is. Martinez and Ioka are fighting in May. Garcia and Calixto are going to fight in May as well for the IBF. And, all that leaves is the WBO champion, Pumalele Kafu, who apparently has a fight lined up in South Africa, but we haven't heard anything about that, so I don't know if that's really happening. We don't know who he was supposed to fight. They're obviously trying to do the Chocolatito fight. That fell apart. So it's now going to be Bam, it seems, because they're trying to get him the unification. It's going to be in the summer. It's going to have to be Kafu. None of the other champions are going to be ready. And I'm fine with that. I think Kafu's a pretty good fighter, but it's definitely a fight that Bam will win and become a unified champion in. He also said that Edgar Berlanga versus Hamza Shiraz is possible to do in the Queensberry match in 5v5. First of all, I love that fight. I love Hamza Shiraz coming off that world title draw, which is kind of a defeat because everybody thought he lost. And he didn't get the title, and him to go and, go right into a 50-50 fight at super middleweight, move up the divisions. We know he's not going to get a title shot immediately, but, if he stays in a big fight next, people are going to really commend that. And we know it's not going to be Plant Berlanga next. There's a really big fight for Berlanga, big opportunity. That would likely be on a turkey event, so we get a big payday. But the interesting part is that it seems like Eddie thinks that Berlanga is still with him. We don't know what's going on. Berlanga said, okay, damn, I'm really a free agent. But Eddie still wants to have Berlanga on the team, so maybe he thinks that they're going to resign. Maybe they already have, or they've discussed it, or Eddie's just confident he'll come back. I do think that Berlanga should stay with Eddie, and I think this is a fantastic fight to come through if that does happen. Andy Cruz is apparently set to fight in an IBF Eliminator in June or July. This isn't too surprising. I've been waiting for them to get a big fight for Andy Cruz. Now, we don't know who it's going to be against or when. He just said it'll be this summer in June or July. As for who this could be, looking at the lightweight rankings for IBF, Andy Cruz is number 3. We have Muratai and Abdullayev at 1 and 2, and they're going to be fight. Actually, Muratai is number 4, and number 1 is vacant, but they're going to fight for the interim championship. Number 5 is Mark Mixayo. So that one could make sense. Although I also feel like Mixayo, is he not supposed to fight Rocky Hernandez, or am I getting him confused with someone else? I may be getting him confused with another fighter, but I thought that was, meant to be Rocky Hernandez, because no, it is meant to be Rocky Hernandez. Yeah, he's fighting at 130 in an eliminator at WBC, with Rocky Hernandez. So wouldn't be Mark Mixayo at 5. 6 is Hironori Mishuru, who I'm going to be honest, I have no idea who that is. Then you have Frank Martin, Lucas Baddy, Sam Noakes, Ibrahim Bala. I don't know how likely a lot of these people are. It could be Mishuru. That one makes sense. That's the highest ranked opponent that it would be, so that's very possible. I don't think it'll be Frank Martin. Lucas Body's a possibility. Um, I'm excited for that. Andy Cruz is a top fighter. I want to see him in good fights at lightweight. I think he's ready to go into that top tier. I think he already is a top 10 lightweight. Get him in 50-50 fights. Push him towards the world title fight. He's had, I think, 5 fights as a pro. He's looked good in all of them. It's time to up the levels and really test him. And, doing an IBF eliminator is pretty good. Then he'll be, I'm telling you, I don't think Loma's going to fight again. And if he does, he'll fight the winner of Murtai Abdulayev. Then whatever happens there, they're going to have to fight Andy Cruz, I think. So really excited to see what goes down in the near future in that division. Such a good division. Mauricio Rufy versus Beneil Dariush apparently has been signed for UFC 317. That's a fantastic fight at lightweight. I think Rufy has now entered the rankings. Dariush, he was meant to fight Moicano, and then that got pulled last minute. Kind of surprised it took him this long to get another fight going, but this is a good one. It's one I don't favor Dariush in. The fighting nerds are crazy, and, I'm really excited for it. I hope this is true, and if it is, this card is going to be nuts. I don't even know if this is going to be on the main card. That's how good this card is. We've just got so many great fighters coming through the pipeline at UFC 317. It's going to be an awesome event. I'm hopeful we get an announcement on that very soon. Before 315, I'm sure we'll get an announcement, so that's, just within the next, 3 weeks, or next 4 weeks, we should get an announcement. I just wanted to see everyone who's on this card because it's sounding so stacked. And then lastly, Gilbert Burns versus Michael Morales has been confirmed to headline the Apex at UFC Vegas 106 on May 17th. We know it's supposed to be Movsar versus Aaron Pico. Movsar wants to wait for the title shot, so it's now going to be Merge Morales at 170. I think that's a decent fight. I believe they're both in the top 15. It's whatever. It's an average Apex main event, so we'll see what goes on from there. But that's all I've got today. Thank you so much for listening. Crazy weekend. The real standouts were Alexander Volkanovski, Paddy the Baddy, John Silva, and I'd say Jaron Ennis. And I'm going to say Shakram Jusov. Just because of how good he looked and how much more this fight meant for him, it was seriously impressive after all he's been through. To come through with such a big win like that, potentially set up a title shot. But yeah, Boots looked phenomenal. I'm telling you, he's going to be a superstar. I was a little bit, we'll see. Nah, he's for real. But he's still got to be tested. Stanionis was good, but there's better. So we're going to see what happens with him in the next few fights. And then, the featherweight division is just so exciting. You got guys like Paddy the Baddy coming up at lightweight. It was just such a fun Saturday with so many new doors opened for both boxing and MMA. I'm so excited for the next few months of these sports. Thank you so much for listening and going on this journey with me. Episode 40 is going to come out this week. Probably won't be special or anything, but it's just a cool milestone. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I will see you then. Peace out.